The battle that built the British Empire in India, Plassey, 1757. 23 men decided the fate of 200 million people. On June 23, 1757, in a mango grove near the village of Plassey in Bengal, a battle lasting barely 3 hours would reshape the destiny of an entire subcontinent. But here's what makes this moment stranger than fiction. It wasn't really a battle at all. It was history's most consequential betrayal, a masterclass in manipulation, and the pivot point where a trading company became an empire. The merchant who became a kingmaker. Robert Clive shouldn't have been in India at all. He'd already attempted suicide twice in his youth, once the pistol misfired, which he took as a sign from Providence that he was meant for greater things. The depressive clog-turned-soldier was right, though not in any way his childhood self could have imagined. By 1757, at just 32 years old, this volatile, brilliant, and utterly ruthless man commanded the East India Company's forces in Bengal, the wealthiest province in India. But Clive faced an impossible situation. The new Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowlah, was only 23 and deeply paranoid, with good reason. The British had been fortifying Calcutta without permission, and the French were whispering promises of support into his ear. In June 1756, Siraj had attacked Fort William in Calcutta, leading to the infamous Black Hole incident where dozens of British prisoners allegedly died in a cramped cell overnight. Whether the deaths numbered 123 as the British claimed, or were far fewer as others suggested, the narrative gave Clive the perfect justification for revenge. The conspiracy takes shape. Here's where the story takes its darkest turn. Clive realized something that would echo through the next 2 centuries of colonial history. You don't need to defeat an empire if you can purchase it from within. Enter Mir Jafar, the commander-in-chief of Siraj's army. Ambitious, resentful, and nursing grievances against his young Nawab, Mir Jafar was the perfect mark for Clive's scheme. Through a series of secret negotiations brokered by merchants and fixers, Clive offered Mir Jafar the throne of Bengal itself. The price? Mir Jafar would betray Siraj on the battlefield and render 2/3 of the Bengali army useless during the coming confrontation. Think about the audacity of this plan. A representative of a foreign trading company was offering to install a puppet ruler over one of the richest territories on earth. It was as if a modern corporate executive decided to overthrow a nation-state and simply did it. The Treaty of Plassey, signed in secret, promised Mir Jafar the throne and guaranteed massive payments to the East India Company. Essentially, Britain would be paid to conquer Bengal with Bengal's own money. The stage is set. As dawn broke on June 23, 1757, the disparity in forces was staggering. Siraj-ud-Dowlah commanded approximately 50,000 infantry, 18,000 cavalry, and 53 pieces of heavy artillery. Clive had just 3,000 soldiers, only 1,100 of whom were British, the rest Indian sepoys. By every conventional measure, this should have been a massacre. The armies faced each other across the plain near Plassey, with the seasonal monsoon rains turning the battlefield into a muddy morass. Siraj's artillery opened fire, and for a moment it seemed the massive Bengali force would simply overwhelm Clive's small contingent. But then the rain came harder, and the Bengali gunpowder got wet. Clive's cannons, better protected, kept firing. The 3-hour empire. What happened next was less a battle and more a theatrical performance of betrayal. Mir Jafar, commanding the largest portion of Siraj's army, did exactly what he'd promised. Nothing. His 45,000 troops stood motionless as the fighting unfolded. Siraj-ud-Dowlah, watching his artillery falter and seeing his supposed allies refuse to engage, must have realized in those terrible hours that he'd already lost before the first shot was fired. The actual fighting was brief and brutal. Siraj's loyalist troops, under commanders like Mir Madden, fought valiantly despite being outnumbered by the conspiracy around them. Mir Madden himself was killed by British artillery, and with his death, the last organized resistance crumbled. By afternoon, Siraj-ud-Dowlah fled the battlefield on a camel, disguised as a common soldier. He would be captured and executed within days, murdered in captivity by Mir Jafar's son. British casualties, approximately 23 dead. Bengali casualties, estimates range from 500 to over 1,000, most of them from the loyalist faction who never knew they'd been sold out. 23 British deaths, 200 million Indian lives forever changed. The aftermath. From trade to tyranny. Mir Jafar got his throne, but it was a gilded cage. He was Nawab in name only, a puppet whose strings were pulled from Calcutta. The East India Company extracted massive reparations, over 2.5 million, roughly 370 million or $475 million in today's money, from Bengal's treasury. Clive himself received 234,000 tons, making him one of the wealthiest men in Britain overnight. But the true prize wasn't money. It was power. Plassey established a precedent that would define British rule in India. Native princes would be played against each other, treaties would be manipulated, and military force would be the final arbiter when diplomacy failed. The East India Company had discovered that conquering India didn't require defeating Indians, it required dividing them. Within a decade, the company controlled Bengal completely. Within 50 years, most of the subcontinent was under British influence. The empire that would eventually rule a quarter of the world's population and territory was born not through superior military might, but through bribery, blackmail, and betrayal in a mango grove. The legacy of Plassey. The battle's consequences rippled across centuries. The immediate aftermath saw the systematic looting of Bengal's wealth, what historians call the past drain of wealth, that would impoverish the region for generations. The Great Bengal Famine of 1770, which killed an estimated 10 million people, 1/3 of Bengal's population, occurred just 13 years after Plassey, as company rule prioritized profit over people. Clive himself never escaped the moral weight of what he'd done. Despite his wealth and fame, he remained haunted and depressive. In 1774, at age 49, facing investigations into his conduct in India, he died under mysterious circumstances, possibly suicide, though the verdict was carefully recorded as death by natural causes. Even in death, the empire protected the man who built it. For Indians, Plassey became a symbol of betrayal, not just by the British, but by their own elites who placed personal ambition above collective welfare. Mir Jafar's name became synonymous with treachery in Bengali culture. Even today, calling someone a Mir Jafar is a devastating insult. Why Plassey still matters. Understanding. Plassey means understanding how empires are really built, not through heroic battles and grand conquests, but through exploitation of divisions, manipulation of ambitions, and the cold calculation that loyalty can be purchased. It's a reminder that the most devastating defeats often come from within, that the greatest victories are won before the fighting begins. The battle that lasted 3 hours created an empire that lasted nearly 2 centuries. That empire shaped the modern world, drawing arbitrary borders, creating new political systems, and leaving legacies of both development and devastation that echo into our present day. Every time we discuss post-colonial politics, wealth inequality between nations, or the long shadows cast by imperialism, we're still living in the world that Plassey made. In that mango grove in 1757, as rain fell and cannons roared and men stood motionless while their world changed forever, the modern age was born in betrayal, and somehow that might be the most honest origin story any empire ever had.